So Isabella's got Mom totally fooled. All I can say is, if being a maid means watching TV all day, eating snacks, and taking naps in my bed, then I guess I finally found a career I can get excited about. November. Saturday. Dad dropped me off at school at 8 o'clock last night for the lock-in. And the second I walked through the door, I knew I made a huge mistake. It was like 90% boys and 10% girls. And even worse, Rowley was there. I turned to leave, but one of the chaperones had already locked the door. So I was stuck there for the night with everyone else. I'm guessing most of the girls in my class decided not to go to the lock-in, and the ones who did show up just didn't get the word in time. I decided I was going to have to make the most of it, and I walked into the auditorium, where everyone else was taking their stuff. The first thing I noticed was that there was at least one adult for every kid, which is not really a great recipe for wild times.
I want your tent to switch
Most of the chaperones were parents, but a few of them were teachers. And something tells me the teachers were only there because they didn't have a choice. I plopped my stuff down on the stage, where all the other kids were. Then I noticed that Rowley was there, so I moved my stuff to the other side of the stage. I think most of the kids had already written off the night, because just about everyone was playing with whatever electronic gadget they brought with them. I didn't even think of bringing my video games, and I didn't have a magazine or anything to entertain myself. So I asked one of the grown-ups what I could do.
Okay.
Mrs. Barnum told me there was an activity center in the corner for anyone who needed to take a fun break during the night.
Has about 100 more babies.
But all of the activities were little kid stuff, like crayons and a ball pit. I decided to just sit on my sleeping bag with my hands folded on my lap instead. At 9 o'clock, the adults said it was time for party games, but nobody heard them because everyone had headphones on. Mr. Tanner said people needed to be social, so he confiscated all the cell phones, music players, and whatever else kids had, and put them in a garbage bag. Then we all sat in a circle in the middle of the auditorium. Mrs. Carr said we were going to play some icebreakers that would help us get to know each other better. But the truth is, all of us kids know one another really well, because we've been together since preschool. In fact, I think we know each other too well. Mrs. Carr said we were going to start with something called the name game, where everyone goes around and gives themselves a nickname that starts with the same letter as their first name, like Sporty Seth, or Funny Fred, or something like that. The idea was that your nickname would say something about your personality. Rowley went first. He said, "Respectful Rowley." It was really stressful trying to come up with a cool-sounding nickname, and my turn was coming up quick. I finally settled on Great Greg, which I know is a little lame, but it was hard to think of a decent nickname that starts with the letter G. I guess the kid to my right, George Fleer, was having the same problem as me. He said, "Great George." I couldn't use the same word as George, or people would think I was copying him. So I sat there for a while trying to think of another good G word, but everyone was staring at me, and my mind just went blank. Then, Mrs. Libby chimed in to try and bail me out. She said, "Jolly Greg." Everyone seemed pretty happy with that, even though jolly doesn't start with the letter G. And it makes you wonder about our education system, especially since Mrs. Libby is the 8th grade honors English teacher. I thought Jolly Greg was a terrible nickname. But before I could come up with something better, the person to my left went, and it was too late. So now I was stuck with a stupid nickname for the rest of the night, and probably until I go off to college, where I would wear a name tag that said, "Hello, my name is Jolly Greg." After that, we played a game called I Never Told Anyone This Before, where we had to tell everyone a secret. Mrs. Carr said the game would help us bond with one another. But I think the real purpose was to let the chaperones know who the troublemakers were. Like the guy who confessed, I was the one who spray painted a bad word on the front of the school. My theory was proven right later on, when Teddy Caldwell went down the hall to the bathroom and a chaperone trailed him, while another spoke in his cell phone, "Subject approaching the corridor 3 boys' bathroom." We played a few more icebreakers, but nobody could concentrate, because every 5 seconds one of the cell phones in the electronics bag would start buzzing or ringing. Then Mr. Tanner would fish through the bag and try to find the phone that was ringing so he could shut it off. Eventually, he just gave up and locked the bag in the teacher's lounge. After the games were over, we had a 15-minute rest break before our next activity. A few of us had brought snacks, but there was a strict no-snack policy, and we had to eat them under cover. The chaperones seemed to know exactly who had the snacks, and they confiscated about 95% of them. Mr. Farley even found my cherry sour balls, which were hidden in my pillowcase. We finally realized that a mole was ratting us out. It was Justin Spitzer, and he was being paid off for the snacks the adults collected. The only kid who still had junk food was Jeffrey Chang, who had a huge bag of cheese puffs. I think Jeffrey knew it was just a matter of time before he was caught, so he locked himself in the boys' bathroom and tried to enjoy his snack. But the adults figured out what was going on, and Jeffrey panicked and got rid of the evidence by, horrors, flushing the cheese puffs down the toilet. What a waste. After our break, we got back into the circle, and Mrs. Dean told us we were going to play a new game called Guess Who? Then she split us up into 10 teams. I was on Team 3 with George Fleer, Tyson Sanders, and a few other kids. I was just glad I didn't have to be on the same team as Rowley, because that would have been totally uncomfortable.
Rowley is your
Here's
best
how the
friend.
game worked. Each team had to go into another room and take a picture of one of its members. But the picture had to be a close-up, like of an ear or a nose, or a hand or something like that.
You've been about through
Then each team
5
would bring their
pages.
picture to the library,
So,
and
Andrew
the other
skipped
teams would have to
5
guess who
pages.
was in the picture. Then Mrs. Dean said the winning team would get ice cream sandwiches from the freezer in the cafeteria. I have to admit, it sounded like a fun game. But when she handed out the cameras, there was practically a riot, since it had been almost 2 hours since any of us had access to any kind of technology. Then we found out they were those old-fashioned instant cameras that develop your pictures right away. And everyone was a little disappointed, because those kinds don't have a screen or anything. Our team went down to the science lab, where we could take our photo in private. The first thing we had to do was figure out who was going to be in the picture. George Fleer said we should take a picture of his belly button, but everybody thought that would be too obvious, because George has a serious outie, and all the other groups would know exactly who it was. We tried taking pictures of different kids in our group, but most of them were too obvious. Nicky Wood wanted the picture to be of him, but he's totally covered in freckles, and we couldn't find a single part of him that wouldn't be a dead giveaway. We took a picture of Christopher Brownfield's back, but we caught one of the Team 4 kids spying on us, and we had to pick someone else. We took a bunch of pictures of Tyson Sanders, but the best one was of his bent arm. You couldn't even tell what the picture was of, so that's the one we went with. When all the teams got back together in the library, we put our picture up on the wall with everybody else's. And as soon as we saw the other pictures, we knew we were gonna win. Some of the pictures were so easy to identify that it was actually kind of pathetic. In fact, don't even ask me what the people on Rowley's team were thinking. They decided to take their picture of him. And of course, he couldn't resist getting his face in the picture. Kind of defeated the whole idea. We were eager to get on with the guessing part of the game, since we knew nobody would be able to figure out who was in our picture. But Mr. Tanner just stood there looking at our photograph, going, Then Mr. Tanner said that he didn't appreciate Team 3's juvenile stunt, and that we were disqualified from the competition. We all looked at one another, trying to figure out what the heck Mr. Tanner was talking about. But Mrs. Dean was mad too. She said it was completely inappropriate to take a picture of someone's posterior. No one on my team knew what posterior meant, but luckily we were in the library, So we looked it up in the dictionary. And you'll never believe this, but it means butt. In fact, we found out that there are about 1 million other words for butt, too. But the teachers were mad. They actually thought we took a picture of somebody's butt. And I guess if you held the picture at a certain angle, you could see how a person could make a mistake like that. Mr. Tanner said he was going to call our parents and tell them to come take us home. And he said that the kid whose butt was in the picture was going to be in really big trouble. I knew that if Mr. Tanner called my parents at 11 o'clock at night, they were not going to be happy. And I could tell a lot of the other kids on my team were thinking the same thing. Then, George Fleer made a run for it, which kind of put everyone into a panic. So the rest of us ran too. It was every man for himself, and I ended up hiding in the music room with Tyson Sanders. We shut the lights off so nobody would come looking for us there. Tyson was really worried that the teachers were going to do a butt lineup to try and match the picture to the right kid. But I told Tyson he didn't have anything to worry about, because he pulls his pants all the way down when he uses the urinal, so everyone already knows what his butt looks like. Me and Tyson were in the music room for a long time, but we were finally caught by a couple of teachers who used Justin Spitzer to sniff us out. The chaperones brought us down to the library, where all the other Team 3 members were already rounded up. Well, everyone except Christopher Brownfield, who for all I know was still hiding behind the soda machine on the second floor. Tyson told Mr. Tanner that the picture was of his arm. Luckily, there's a mole near Tyson's elbow that matched up with the one in the picture, or I don't think Mr. Tanner would have believed him. After Mr. Tanner looked at the picture and Tyson's arm a few more times, he said he had made an innocent mistake, and that any reasonable person would have done the same thing. It seemed like a pretty lame apology to me, but I was just glad he wasn't still talking about calling our parents. After that, the party games were over, and the adults said it was time for us to turn in for the night. I think everyone who went to the lock-in was planning on staying up all night, but at this point, I was glad to go to sleep if it meant the night might go by quicker. I went to the auditorium to get into my sleeping bag, which was parked right next to Jennifer Hausman, who was actually not that bad looking. But the grown-ups said the girls needed to take their stuff and move down the hall to the library media room, and the boys had to stay in the auditorium. I was hoping I could get some rest, but a lot of the guys started horsing around, and it was impossible to sleep. At one point, George Fleer started chasing people around with his Audi, which was pretty terrifying. See, this is the kind of thing I can't stand about boys my age. When it comes down to it, they're just a bunch of wild animals. When George started chasing people around, I excused myself to go to the bathroom so I could brush my teeth. The bathroom is in the back of the auditorium, and the lights were off, so it was really dark back there. I heard this weird noise, swish, swish, and I got a little freaked out for a second, because our school has a problem with rodents. But it turned out to just be Fregley playing by himself in the ball pit.